Welcome back to Open Line. We're talking with the ladies from Beacon Impact tonight, talking about a lot of different things. A lot of it is focused on criminal justice reform, but let's also talk about occupational licensing within our state. Evidently, our state likes to hand out licenses, right?
We really love it.
We're really high up there.
Yeah. When we first started looking at this issue, which was about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a D rating from a national organization as being one of the worst states for our occupational licensing burden, both on the amount of licenses required and then what the burden was to get those licenses. So we had 112 different fields that required a license when we started. Compare that to about 50 years ago, you have about 1 in 25 jobs that required a license, and they were for things that largely pertained to public health and safety. So doctors, nurses, accountants, people who, if they were messing with your life or your finances and they didn't know what they were doing, you didn't have much recourse.
Right.
That's grown to 1 in 3 to 1 in 4, depending on the state nowadays, that require an occupational license to work. So it's a huge deal. And so we have been picking away at those for quite some time and trying to reform that in the state.
And I'm gonna push the pause button real quick, because I always like to get to our callers who are kind enough to call in. Kay is on the line. Hi, Kay.
Hey, I'd like to know, I'm a convicted felon for, it's a non-violent crime, and actually I have 2, it's the same crime, identity theft, and I would like to know how to get back in the workforce. And I mean, I've had so many obstacles, you know, a felony, they automatically throw it out. They don't even consider what it is, or, you know, or anything giving you a chance.
Kay, do you have an idea of what you would like to do?
I would like to, anything in helping people. I would like to get in social services or something. Where things like this come up and you have somebody to go to talk to them. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Well, okay, let's see if we can get you a couple of first good steps here, because that is, you know, when you fill out an application for a job, it's on there. Do you have any prior felonies? And a lot of times that can go right out the door then. Yes. Or right in the trash bin.
Absolutely correct. So as we were saying, this pertains to occupational licenses. There's 110 fields remaining that require an occupational license. Of those, if there's something that she's wanting to work in, of those different trades, then she could go to the different board, which would all be under the Commerce Department, and ask them if they would accept her if she were to apply for one of these licenses. So some of it's just starting to look through what the options are, but a lot of these are trades that you can learn in a shorter period of time than going to traditional college. And then additionally, a lot of them are things that you can do as an entrepreneur. You don't necessarily have to get somebody to hire you, which is the beauty in this. You can start your own business, you can contract, you can, you know, move around the state and offer these services for different people in different areas. So it's a really good opportunity for people who are being hurt by that felony box.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so hopefully maybe even go on the Department of Commerce's website and you might find a listing of the different occupational licenses that are out there, and start that way, kind of work your way backwards and say, I like this field or I like that field, and then see what it would take and contact.
Right. And it's really important that the language of the bill that passed did state that as long as it doesn't directly relate to the job that you're seeking. So I think Kay was talking about identity theft or something related to that field. So those would probably be out. Those would be exemptions for her in those industries. But there are plenty of other occupations that she could definitely apply for where this would not be a burden for her anymore.
All right, Kay. Hopefully that helps, and hopefully if you need to call one of these boards, they can help you from there and say, let's go ahead and make sure that you qualify, and then start working on what you need to do to get that license. Let's talk a little bit more about the occupational licensing, and something that came up in this last session was the natural hair braiding license, and I think that caused confusion for a lot of people, including myself. I thought, well, what are we talking about here? I don't really get the debate. Bring us up to speed. This did not pass, by the way.
It did not pass yet. So the natural hair braiding industry really took off in the 1990s, and this is a way for African Americans to style their hair that's all natural. A lot of them were finding that they had a lot of difficulties with some of the chemicals that were being used on their hair before, a lot of alopecia and different problems that were being caused. And so many people started turning to this method of styling hair that was all natural. There's no chemicals, there's not really even the tools. I mean, they use their fingers and maybe a comb. That's it. I mean, it's hardly, you know, it's very basic. And this really took off in the 1990s. The industry very much grew. In Memphis, it was really taking off, and we have a woman that contacted us a few years ago named Deborah Newtall, who's from Memphis, and she had sort of pioneered this movement. She had taught herself to braid as a young child. She had begun teaching her sister and other people around her. She opened her own school and her own shop, and it was just taking off. She was able to pull herself out of welfare, bought herself a house. She was a single mom, and then she saw other women in her community who were also being able to do this. So it was life-changing for them. Unfortunately, once they started filing their taxes and they were making quite a bit of money, the cosmetology board got wind of this and decided that, oh no, you cannot do that. You have to have a cosmetology degree to do that, which meant at the time you had to go to school for 1,500 hours to learn how to use chemicals and all these treatments that they were trying to get away from. And they had to pay, you know, it could be up to $30,000 to get a cosmetology degree. And so what happened was some of them jumped through the hoops to do that. Some of them simply went across the border to Mississippi, where you don't have to have a license to work. And some of them gave up altogether. And so Deborah and her sister Tammy contacted us, and we actually found, first and foremost, there was a law that said you had to have a license just to shampoo hair in a shop, which had a 300-hour component as well.
Wow.
So we actually overturned that about 2 years ago, and then have continued to try to work to get rid of the natural hair care license. So the natural license got pulled out of the cosmetology license about 2 years ago. So it's a new license all of its own now, and you have to have 300 hours, and that can still cost $6,000 to $10,000 for somebody to obtain. Okay, so what's the pushback against this? So we said this was not successful, this legislation. So somebody was successful in pushing back and shutting this down.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of debate back and forth on, is it safe to do this without a license? And our argument to that is always, if other states don't have the license and there aren't people that are being injured in those states, then is it really to protect the health and safety of the consumer, or is it to protect an industry and stop people from competition in that industry? And I think what we find at the end of the day is that a lot of these licenses, you have people who are in the industry who are sort of protecting their turf, if you will.
Makes sense.
And so but we have a whole group of women that we represent, that we will be bringing this back for to the General Assembly next year, hopefully, and hopefully we will move it forward.
Where did things kind of fall this session? How far did it make it? What was the vote? Did it come to a vote? Yeah,
it made it through several committees, and actually got pretty far along in the process. I think in the House it went through 3 committees, and in the Senate is where it stalled. It did not make it out of the committee that it needed to, but in the Senate only had to go through 1. So I think once we get a chance to educate folks a little bit more and bring the ladies up to meet with their representatives and senators, I think we'll have a much better opportunity to move forward this next year.
And it is that important to you guys to keep pushing this, to do it another session, I take it. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, these people's lives are very much impacted, and I think one thing that was surprising to me when we started working on occupational licensing is they're not getting a slap in the wrist if they're braiding somebody's hair without a license. We've met people who have up to $14,000 in fines over this. And these are people who are, a lot of times they've immigrated here, a lot of times they are self-made, they're trying to do the right thing, they're trying to get on their feet, they are contributing to society, they're paying their taxes, and to come in and do this to them is wrong. I mean, it's actually a wrong that we don't feel like we can be silent on. So it's very important to us to reform this.
I'm glad we took a moment to explain this, because we covered it and I still was left with many questions. So I understand it better now, so thank you. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we will wrap things up. Thank you. Stay with us.